Westcott, and on behalf of the team at the Peace of Mind Plan and ClearFlight, welcome to the Focusing Thoughts for April 2011. Last week I had the opportunity, the privilege, of interviewing Dan Sullivan, the founder of the Strategic Coach program, in regard to the future of financial services. Dan has some interesting insights in regard to what lies ahead for the next 3 to 5 years, and I look forward to the opportunity you now have to listen to some of his comments. Thank you. Hi Dan, thanks for your time today. One of the key questions that many of the advisors that I talk to find as a burning issue is that they wonder why they need to change the way that they're currently doing business. Many people sort of feel that life will go on in the financial services industry, and they don't see, I guess, what I've thought I see coming, which is the need to evolve into a different type of business because of the risk of commoditization in the financial services business.
Yeah, I think that it's not a risk of commoditization. Commoditization, Mark, has really been happening since I've been following the financial services industry, which dates back to 1974. I've seen the constant cutting down on, number one, just the amount of compensation that people are getting under what you would call commission-based income, but really you're getting paid for the sale of a commodity. So most financial advisors who are on commission are actually manufacturers' reps. You know, they're actually a representative of the manufacturer. Now, they may have 3 or 4 manufacturers, but what they're doing is they're representing a manufacturer. And just like in every other manufacturing industry, the prices are being driven down by competition, and I think that the other thing is that there's an awareness that more and more the consuming public is asking what is the value creation that's actually taking place for the compensation, and they can't see quite the connection. For example, if you place a very, very large life insurance policy, or there's a big investment, so for example, and your compensation is, I'm speaking in American dollars here, but it could be Australian dollars, but you're speaking in, somebody just gets paid $100,000 for something. But there's no equation between the effort and any kind of problem solving. They were simply a middle person who, went through a process and they basically placed the money. But what determined the size of their check was actually the size of the check that was written by the customer. So in essence, the size of the check that the customer wrote was the key to paying the financial advisor. And that's the way it's always been. I mean, I'm sure the people who sell airplanes, it's the same thing. But after a while, the customer looks and say, well, is there any way that I can cut this? And the manufacturer looks at it and says, is there any way that I can cut this? And so what happens in the middle is that the financial advisors get squeezed. And we can see, I mean, in certain places in the world, Australia being one, much more severely than was true before, is what you're doing now is you're seeing real possibilities that the commission-based income or the commodity-based income will either be severely restricted or it'll be taken away altogether. And so, Mark, we've been together for 16 years since the early 90s, and this has been a continual discussion between the two of us, but it's also been a general discussion in the Strategic Coach that if it's not going to be better 5 years from now than it is today, and this will certainly be true with compensation for financial advisors, then you have to create an alternative plan. And it's not only that the compensation is going to go down, it's going to require more effort to achieve it, but the regulatory controls and the complexity that's involved is just going to get more and more severe. So what I said to my financial advisors starting in the early 90s, I said, look, keep the game going as long as you possibly can. You've been trained for this game. But at the same time, I would create an alternative, where you're getting paid directly by the client for something that goes way beyond the product. It goes way beyond just placing a product sale. And what we've discovered is that most customers of means, in other words, they can write a check, would like a lot of assistance with thinking about their future, especially as the life has gotten more complex. And that's the model that virtually all the financial advisors, they're becoming like life coaches. They're helping people think through dozens of different scenarios in their life, which they themselves don't have the time to do, they don't have the experience to do. And Mark, you've gone in that direction. I mean, in many ways, you've created the most different kinds of modules for helping people think through different kinds of life situations than almost any financial advisor in the world. And I have hundreds, as you know, hundreds and hundreds who have gone this route. So I think that the model that you've established is almost the fullest model that I've seen in terms of just being a terrific coach for people regardless of what kind of situation they have to think through.
No, thanks, Dan. And certainly when I've displayed some of the peace of mind plan material that we've created, I know you've been impressed with that, and so have a lot of the other advisors from the UK and certainly from the USA. Yeah, certainly one of the issues I think advisors are facing, and they probably don't even know it yet, is that the internet is just becoming a medium that's really going to multiply the race towards commoditisation. In Australia we have things we have to produce for clients called statements of advice. There's already people now doing that on the internet, so clients can bypass the advisors, and the number of sales of direct life insurance, for example, even in Australia, over 300,000 people last year just in Australia took out their life insurance without any intermediary whatsoever.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd be seeing that in the US as well, obviously, to an even more multiplied effect.
Yeah, and that's and I said I wouldn't want to be in competition with that. If I were a financial advisor, I wouldn't want to be in competition with the microchip. Because first of all, people are, anyone under 30 years of age right now, this is going to be their primary vehicle for information and knowledge and so many of their transactions. So that they're automatically going to bypass intermediaries, but it doesn't replace a live human being who asks questions. You see, the one thing that the internet can't do is it can't ask custom designed questions just for the individual based on that individual's prescription for their life. The internet has no ability to do that. You can have a powerful program that asks a lot of good questions, but they're not the specific questions. And the other thing is that there's a type of thinking that individuals do when they're in the presence of another individual who is just there for them. In other words, it's they're not sitting there seeing how big a product sale I'm going to get out of this, but they're simply asking a question. How do you see your future? If we're at a certain point in the future and you're looking back, what has to happen during the interim period for you to feel, really happy with your progress? And then the other thing is, what do you see as, the stuff that really, you're worried about or you're anxious about? What are the things that you feel excited about? What are the things you feel confident about? Well, no computer program can possibly do that and have the same kind of emotional and psychological impact that would lead a person to say, I really have to make some decisions here. The internet can probably inform them really well, but it can't get them to develop the kind of commitment to their future and have the motivation to really change their life. And that's where the lifetime coaching, with your program, I can see just by allowing people to organize their future in your modules is something that nobody else can do, because you're making decisions right on the spot as the advisor. This is more important than this, and that the human element is really crucial, and people will pay for the human element. They want to pay as little as possible if it looks like a commodity, so that they can save their money, so that they can pay as much as possible if it looks like custom designed human experience.
Specifically for them. Dan, just one quick final question. A lot of advisors are sitting out there saying, well, no, we want to hang on as long as we can and so on, but for those that are struggling with the concept of having to make a significant change in the way that they're used to running their business, what would you say to them in regard to encouraging them to think about what the future might look like in 5 years?
Well, you can do it in long form, or you can actually do it in the short form. First of all, I think, since you're in Australia and you've really thought this model through, I think they should actually get in touch with you and, just spend some time with you where you can show them what you've done and lay out the game plan. But if they had to learn something in an hour that I think would change their view. I wrote a book on this, which is called The Dan Sullivan Question, that basically I think that the future is created out of clients' answers to a particular question. And, I would, simply go online with strategiccoach.com, and it's a quick, easy book. You can read it in an hour, but I've had people say they've changed their entire view of their business just by reading this. And there's a particular skill that you develop, which probably a month after you read the book you're going to be pretty good at, and that's the gateway to actually getting into this future.
Dan, thanks for your time.
My pleasure, Mark.
Thank you.